Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra patch notes review. The first balance patch since the new set is coming today. It's called patch 1.2, so let's dive into all the changes. But you know the drill. Before we do, hit the subscribe button down below to not miss out on future content, and let me briefly introduce you to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN, one of the leading virtual private network providers out there. A virtual private network keeps your data secure and yourself anonymous while using the internet. NordVPN comes with super fast servers, allows you to unlock your favorite entertainment websites like Netflix. They provide a 30-day money-back guarantee. They also have an included cybersecurity suite, which acts as an ad blocker to boot. They don't lock any of your data, provide a 24/7 customer support, and you can use it on up to 6 simultaneous connections, so one account covers most or all of your electronic devices. And most importantly, they don't have any bandwidth limit, so you can use it non-stop without it getting throttled, which is particularly important for heavy users like us. It also won multiple awards and comes highly recommended by top technology experts. So if you're still surfing online without a VPN, now is the time to change that. Get NordVPN now, 70% off for a 3-year plan, including 1 month extra for free using the code ManuS or the personalized link in the description down below. And now on to today's content. All right, so let's take a look. Here quickly the reminder that they changed the patching a bit. The patch still goes out at the usual time, but the changes will usually only be available around 24 hours later. So the patch, so the time that you can play with the new patch basically is shifted to 1 day later, roughly. Another note here is for a limited time, you can permanently unlock an exclusive Rainbow Poro Guardian and accompanying emote for free. Just gotta go to the shop section and purchase the bundle for 0 coins. Not sure why they don't just add it to accounts so people can't forget it or can't miss it if they don't follow patch notes or whatever, or don't read them that thorough. A bit weird of a way to do it, but free stuff is cool anyway, so no major reason to complain here, but just a bit of a weird way to implement it because people might miss it and then be sad. We'll take a look at the Poro real quick before we dive into the changes. This is the Poro and the emote. While I don't like the Moonstruck Poro very much, this is actually kind of a cute little fellow and a cute emote, so that's pretty nice actually. Alright, here they talk a bit about additional metrics and changes to like balancing philosophy. I'm not going to dive too much into it. There's no major stuff to highlight here, I think, but if you want to read it, I'll put the link to the patch notes in the description below. If you haven't seen them yet, check it out yourselves. And now we get into the card updates, which is the part that most of you care about the most, I presume. So first, we have a buff to Vladimir. Vladimir's level 2 now doesn't just deal damage to the Nexus, it drains the Nexus, which is pretty nice. So he makes racing a whole lot easier, and the payoff of leveling him a bit bigger even. Although a 6/6 regeneration is already pretty good, as we know from Garen, where the biggest part of his strength probably lies in him being a big regeneration unit, and Vladimir is that once leveled up. But yeah, the drain makes him really obnoxious and really hard to raise while pressuring a lot still with his ability. So that's a nice buff. We'll see how that plays out and if there might be some more appeal for Vlad decks. Not sure, honestly, since while it's a nice addition, I'm not sure it like actually changes the dynamic of Vlad or decks that play Vlad too much, but we'll see. Next we have Karma. Karma has been shifted from 5 cost to 6 cost to make her even more fragile and slower to come online, which is an interesting change. Karma has been on the watch list and a bit problematic since she generates a lot of free card advantage, levels up without any real condition. Basically, as long as you can make the game go till turn 10, she is gonna level up, and once she's leveled up, she's really powerful. and also generates like a free card each turn on the way there, as long as she lives. So that certainly makes putting her in your deck and deploying her a much larger cost. So we'll see how that's gonna play out. It should certainly be a dampener to decks like Karma Ezreal, and make her a much less efficient like raw unit, since a 4/3 that draws you a card at the end of turn for 5 was a pretty good rate, while at 6 that's not so much the case anymore. And then we have another champion buff to another one of the champions that has barely seen any play for the longest time, except for a short period where there was this barrier deck by I actually forgot his name. Oh yeah, Super JJ. But yeah, Shen now is a 3/5 instead of a 2/5, and leveled, that means he's a 4/6. That's pretty nice because he was a bit weak as a unit from his stats, and that makes him a bit better of a like standalone unit that can't be like just blocked and damaged for free as easily, and also just apply some pressure when he's alone and stuff like that. I like that buff. It's not gonna like warp him or make him super much more appealing, but it certainly makes him a better card on raid, which might make people experiment more with him again. But we'll see how it pans out. Maybe Vlad or especially Shen might need some further adjustments, not necessarily make them better, but maybe make them like not better on raid, but maybe make them a bit different, like shift some stuff around to give them some more appeal or something like that. We'll see. Next we have a nerf to a new champion. Vi got taken down a notch by removing her, reducing her health from 5 to 4. Now that means she trades with most other 5-drop units, something like Radiant Guardian, Lancer and all that stuff. Everything with 5 attack. Now trades with her, where before she was able to take them down and survive and still be a threat. Interesting change that certainly makes her a lot more fragile. It also allows her to take down a lot fewer units, and it also means that on turn 5, with just a bare 5 mana, no storage, you can now thermogenic beam her, which is also a pretty big deal. She's still gonna be a fairly good card, I think, but much less of a like go-to board dominant auto inclusion, I think. She was very good, and I think she's still gonna be pretty good going forward, but not quite as good. And it's gonna be a bit more important to level her quickly, I guess, because the extra health point now matters a lot more, while in the past the 6 health point on the level up was kind of just nice to have, but not that critical. Then we see another buff to an old champion that has been nerfed quite a lot, and that's Hecarim. Hecarim now is a 5/5 instead of a 4/5 to be able to attack a bit better, and I kind of like that, since as a 6-drop, once they removed the 6 health, which was a change that I liked, 4/5 on base stats as a 6-drop is a bit weak, and he hasn't really seen any play since they gutted him a bit too much by also changing the spell. And this certainly makes him line up a lot better. And if you look at it, like, there are like 5-drop champions that have better stats, and without him leveled, the 2/2s he makes have much less of an impact than the 3/2s in the past, to a point where he just kind of didn't line up very well and didn't pressure enough across the board anymore, where you just didn't make any decks over other champions. Even something like Kalista just overtook him in quality quite a bit. Not sure if this is going to be enough to see a return of the Hecarim, but it's at least a nice push in the right direction. I felt like they gutted him too much with the nerfs. Now we're on to followers and spells. Great Harm Companion getting a buff, becoming a 5/5, which is a pretty big deal. Like, this makes it a really good 5-drop, I think. It was kind of decent as 4/5, but a bit on the weak side, especially in how it lines up against some other 5s and stuff like Garen, for example, was awkward. But now, as a 5/5, it lines up pretty well against most things, other than like a Guardian with the trigger with the tough. And then as a 5/5 scout, threatening to hit for 10 in the same turn is pretty brutal, and especially against more controlling decks, this is a great standalone threat that can sometimes just win the game on its own. Make them Ruination on your attack turn, for example, then just drop a Great Horn, hit them for 10, win the game, stuff like that. Pretty powerful. So yeah, I could totally see this making it into Constructed now, here and there. It certainly has some appeal. And they buffed this because they're gonna nerf some of the other sort of overpowered Demacia cards. Grizzled Ranger now is only a 3/1 instead of a 4/1, lining up a whole lot worse and allowing a lot more things to just kind of either block it for free or just take it, because taking 6 is a lot easier than taking 8. Thanks to the scout, shaving 1 attack here means shaving 2 damage per turn, potentially. And they also changed Loyal Badger Bear, and Loyal Badger Bear also lost the point of power and is now a 3/4 instead of a 4/4, which I think is a great change. It should have been a 3/4 to begin with. Like a 3/4 would have also already been amazing. I had no idea why this card came out as a 4/4, especially when we don't even have like 4-cost 4/4s anymore, basically, with like Chump-Wump being a 4/3. That card was just like a 4-drop, like a decent vanilla 4-drop that costs 3, which was just outrageous. And especially Badger Bear into Grizzled Ranger was just a disgusting curve that brick wall blanked so much stuff from so many decks and also applied so much pressure that it wasn't even funny anymore. So glad to see them taken down a notch and nerfed. Then we get another subtle Demacia buff on a different card. Laurent Chevalier now is a 3/2 instead of a 3/1, which is neat. Now he's a bit more likely to get more than one trigger off by taking out small units like spiders and stuff like that, or being more likely to take out something a little bigger with the help of a War Chefs and stuff like that. So this is now actually kind of an interesting alternative to Grizzled Ranger. It doesn't generate the same amount of tempo, but it generates more board control and even potentially more card advantage than Grizzled Ranger. So gonna be interesting if the card might end up seeing some play in certain Demacia decks now. There were very rare cases where you saw one in like some of the Fiora standalone decks and stuff like that, but not really, and now this is actually kind of like a decent option to at least consider. Speaking of standalone, standalone now costs 4, basically completely gutting the card. I don't think the archetype was much of a problem in terms of power level, but the way the deck played was just kind of like not the most healthy for the game, probably. It wasn't the most fun. It made games kind of, as they say, deterministic and kind of one-sided and narrow-minded, especially with the existence of cards like Zed and Elusive, and also very limited answers in most regions, especially when you put it on a champion. Then even Purify doesn't help. So a lot of the cards that help are expensive and slow, like Vengeance, or are like Will of Ionia, which like one region has access to. They're just not a lot of good options, other than basically trying to like muscle through the unit with challenges and blocks and small damage spells, which often is thwarted by just barriers or simply them not blocking and racing you. Next we have Legion Rearguard, so we're on to some changes to Burn, which I feel like were thoroughly needed. The deck was a bit too efficient and overwhelming. Like, its win rate, its performance wasn't through the roof, but it was very strong and also very limiting. Like, there were a lot of cool and interesting decks that were also pretty solid and had potential, but they just wouldn't hold up against Burn ever. Like, they just wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell, basically, to beat Burn. So basically, you already out of the gate auto lose to one of the most popular tier 1 decks out there, making Burn very smothering to diversity in the metagame, basically. And yeah, I like that they're addressing that, because they pushed the envelope a bit too far with the new cards in terms of critical mass and efficiency. So yeah, Legion Rearguard here, now a 3/1, which is not a super big change, but it's a nice subtle change. That means stuff like Helpless Aristocrat now trades with the rearguard and leaves behind the spider for the next unit rather than needing both to trade into the rearguard. It also means that now the thermogenic beam decks can actually like kill the turn 1 rearguard. So playing rearguard on 1 used to be the go-to against thermogenic beam decks, so you could hit them for 3 before they could kill it, and now they can just beam it still, or Blades Edge it. And the thing that I dislike about this change is how it affects non-burn decks, because it was actually quite important for aggro decks to have this 2 health 1-drop against these PNZ, Thermo Beam, reactive control decks like Ezreal and Heimerdinger and stuff like that, to get traction and get pressure on and put them on the back foot, so they can't like kill your 1-drop, Mystic Shot, your 2-drop, and so on, and just kind of line up their stuff against all your plays, and suddenly it's mid-game and you're losing because you haven't done any damage. And now that is kind of gone. So there were a bunch of nice decks that that relied on rearguard for the turn 1 power that now lost that because of burn. So maybe it would have been nicer to address cards that are more specific and unique to burn, and that burn depends more on than other decks, rather than generally nerfing aggro. Like nerfing rearguard is a nerf to burn, a meaningful one, but it's also a nerf to every other Noxus aggro, which I'm not that big of a fan of. I would have rather preferred them to incentivize people to play different kinds of aggro than burn by nerfing the burn part of burn, rather than the cards that are just, yeah, universal good aggro cards. But we'll see how it plays out. I also would have liked them to group the cards a bit better together in the patch notes, like the Boom Crew Rookie nerf with the rearguard, because yeah, they go into the same deck and they are nerfs to the same deck. But anyway, we'll work through them in order anyway. Next we have Kindly Tavern Keeper has turned from a 2/3 into a 3/3, which is a really nice change. The card was kind of neat, but a bit too weak. 2/3 for a 3-drop just lines up kind of poorly, and you really aggressively would need the heal to put this in your deck. And now as a 3-cost 3/3, it's a really nice sort of decent 3-drop for any sort of slower, more reactive Freljord deck to have a very solid 3-drop that trades with most 2s and 3s in the game, and even some 4s, while also providing some health. So I like that. Freljord needs some help. I honestly think it will need more help than this, but this is a nice push in the right direction, I would say. Next we have Deep Meditation. The card is a bit in a weird spot. A fair share of decks that play it aren't that great at making it cheap, like for example Karmalux, for example. They don't have a lot of cheap spells, so it takes them a while to get it cheap. So they often play it for 4, which is super fine. Like at 4, the card is not great, but fine. The problem we have now is at 3, it's nice but not great. And at 5, it's actually pretty bad to like kind of horrible. So the card is kind of in a weird spot where I agree before, especially in the right decks, at 4 and 2, it was possibly a bit too good. But the problem now is at 3 and 5, I think it's a bit too bad. Like, the card seems kind of hard to balance on that point because there's no nuance in between this. Maybe what they could have done, and I would have liked to see, is if they do this, maybe make it cost 5 and 2, or make it cost 3 and 4. I think that would have been a better change. I don't like the 3 and 5 change, because that puts it from a bit too good into a bit too bad territory, while just adjusting the cost reduction from like 4 to 3, 4 being a 4 and then a 3, or a 5 and then a 2, to make it either higher risk, higher reward, by having to pay 5 if you can't enable it, but getting still the 2-cost power play if you can, depending on what they want to do with it, or making it just like higher power when you can enable it, but also less bad when you can't, and just move it more towards the middle. Those are like 2 better options, I think, to make it, less discrepancy between floor and ceiling, or a bigger discrepancy between floor and ceiling, rather than moving the floor and the ceiling, to make it just overall kind of a bad card. I think the card will see a lot less play, and especially in a deck that cannot quickly and reliably trigger the cost reduction, the card's going to be really bad now, I think. Playing this at 5 cost is really, really bad. Next we have Boom Kruky. Boom Kruky went from a 1/4 to a 1/3. This card was one of the premium aggro cards for quite some time, especially in burn, and now as a 1/3, it will often only deal 2 damage rather than 4 for free, so it won't get in that second attack, which is a big deal, and one of the big ways where burn is scary. They hit you with this, then they hit you again, and you took so much damage that they can just burn you out. And a lot of the time you even have a 3 attack unit that could block this, but since it doesn't kill it, you might as well just put your 2 attack unit in front of it and trade your 3 attack unit into their 2/3, for example. And now you can eat it for free with your 3/2s and only take 2 damage, which is a big, big deal. We'll see how that affects Boom Kruky's playability, actually, because it might actually kind of kill the card now, or at least require you much more to play buffs like Brother's Bond, to buff it, to make sure that it at least trades, rather than gets eaten for free while dealing 2 damage. I think it's good that they changed the card. Not sure if this is the ideal way, and if this is potentially a case from like the Deep Meditation, where it goes from too good to too bad, because there is lack of nuance between those 2 options. But we'll see about it. But yeah, taking away the best, nerfing the best 1-drop and the best 2-drop, arguably, in burn will definitely dampen its early game power, which translates into a much harder time burning people out and getting them low enough to burn them out, or potentially makes them 1 turn slower at killing, which in a lot of matchups makes all the difference, because a lot of decks lose to burn by like 1 turn, being burned out the turn that they would win during combat before winning. And now if burn could only do that a turn later, suddenly burn is dead before they can burn you out. Next we have Brood Awakening. They basically reverted the buff on it, making it cost 6 again. They just felt it was intended to help Spiders decks, but in reality what it did is it helped control decks, especially Corina control and similar stuff like Karma Spiders before Corina just took over as the more potent one. And also just became like throwaway bodies for like they who endure, making attacking into these decks really, really obnoxious and really, really hard. It's not a change I would have expected necessarily, but it's actually, when you think about it, quite a sensible change, and makes a lot of sense and is pretty reasonable. Unfortunately, this will kind of kill the card again and put it back into the obscurity that it was in the past. So we'll see how decks like Corina will adapt, because I don't think they really want that card anymore now. Next we have Longtooth, so Chum the Waters and Fist Chum the Waters. Got changed. Longtooth now is a 5/2, making him a bit more reliable to attack and sort of challenge the vulnerable unit. And even sometimes you can now eat some 1 attack units and keep your Longtooth, which is nice. Like, it's not a big deal, but it makes the card a bit better. You mostly get it from Fizz, and even then you often don't play it because it's not worth it and not that efficient, and the deck has better things to do with its mana a lot of the time. But now it's a bit more rewarding when you do. Monkey Idol, kind of a weird card, kind of a bad card. Health got changed from 4 to 5. So now you basically get a third monkey out of it, which is neat. But yeah, I doubt this card is gonna see any play either way. Not sure where it fits in. And last but not least, we have Slotbot, which now is a 1/4 baseline, which is actually pretty solid. I quite like this card now. I've seen it in action a bit before as an O3 and was quite positively surprised with how decent it looked. And now as a 1/4 baseline, yeah, I can totally see this being actually kind of a nice and interesting card to mess around with. And the RNG is like not bad RNG. It's like the outcome will usually be very reasonable. I'm not 100% sure if it can kill itself. I haven't seen it kill itself. And my guess would be that they made it so it can't kill itself, because that would be the kind of like bad RNG frustrating thing when your card just kind of implodes, especially given that the payoff on the other end isn't that great. Like the best outcome isn't remotely as powerful as the worst outcome is bad and devastating. So yeah, I think it can't kill itself. I haven't looked it up and I haven't seen it implode in game yet. So if you know for sure, let me know in the comments. Then we have the watch list. Unyielding Spirit at the top of the watch list. I agree, glad it's at least on the watch list. I think the card is of questionable design. Like the card is not necessarily like too good and too oppressive that it like is dominating everything or anything. But the card is very frustrating to play against. Most regions can't answer it at all, especially on a champion. Like I think there are like 3-ish answers in the game that handle it on a champion, and they are in 2 regions. So it's basically, actually like 3 regions. It's Bilgewater has 2 or 3 answers depending on the champion size. Oh no, 2 answers. It has the fish, and if you have a Nautilus, you have Riptide. So there's 2 conditional answers. Ionia has Will of Ionia, and Demacia has Detain. I think that's all. I might have forgotten one, but I'm not sure. And Detain is not that great of a constructed card, and also will still allow them to get the card back and so on. So yeah, pretty awkward. And I think the fact that the card is burst is just kind of, yeah, not healthy. Like we have cards like Judgment that are very devastating but also high risk, so you can counterplay them. Unyielding Spirit is just expensive but not risky at all. No counterplay basically, except for a few very limited, at times not even fast answers, so the opponent can still blow out a removal, blow out a unit in combat before you even get to deal with the card. So it always trades 1-for-1, so you're not even like getting a leg up by answering it. So yeah, I hope they change it. I hope they maybe make it a mana more expensive, but that doesn't really change the card's problems. It just makes it less playable. So I hope maybe they just make it fast. It's the kind of effect that I think should be fast and not burst. It's just too powerful of an effect and too restrictive of an effect for burst, because if you make it fast, there's a real cost to committing to it, and there's a lot more room for most regions to stop it, which is good. And I think that would be a healthy way to change it, rather than just make it bad and people not play it by making it too expensive. Then they are looking at pilfered goods and card stealing. They basically talking about the frustrating stuff, but yeah, pilfered good is a particular culprit as its power level is rather high, and drawing multiple cards is more likely to create a stole the perfect card situations where investigating possible adjustments that can ease some of the pain surrounding the mechanic. Yeah, I don't know, I guess I can see how that's frustrating for more casual players. I felt the cards were fine. Sure, Pilfered Goods is a bit pushed, drawing 2 cards with a fairly low condition for 2 mana. It's nice, but the fact that you draw 2 cards from their deck also means the card are of questionable usefulness and reliability to you. But given that they work with Black Market Merchant, being able to reduce them, maybe Pilfered Goods should cost 3. I don't know. And yeah, they're looking at Nexus damage in Rising Tides, which is a good thing because they push that a lot. So yeah, they looking at options how to adjust it. And yeah, Karma and Ezreal are still on the watch list, even though they nerfed Karma now. They are continuing to monitor both champions. I think Ezreal is mostly fine. Like, Ezreal was just a bit too fueled by stuff. Right now he's not even that well positioned. The Karma nerf will hurt him a lot, given that Karma Ezreal is the most viable version. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out. Then there's a lot of rule text clarity, which is nice, since a lot of these cards are very unclear, especially from the new set. So we'll see a lot of clarity update on the text, which is good. Like, for example, that you cannot actually steal champions with pivot goods, which isn't said anyway. It's just kind of something that you notice eventually after you haven't stolen any champions at all. Then there's the Poro stuff. We get a new, like, sort of low bit arcade board that looks a bit like Minecraft. We get 4 new emotes in addition to the Poro emote, so 5 new emotes total basically. A new arcade style card back, which is decent. Then we get some expedition archetype updates. I'll leave them here for you to check out in person. They're just a bunch of like swaps. They removed cards and added different cards to the archetypes, and very few archetypes have had a card removed or added without both happening. Like, for example, Crimson Guard lost Unyielding Spirit, and Demacian Steel got Vanguard First Blade and On Guard added. And yeah, there's now a Polish version in terms of language support. Some miscellaneous stuff like Oracle Eye will not be working while it's your opponent's action, because there's a glitch, like a bug that they need to fix. And yeah, until they fix it, you can only Oracle's Eye when it's your action. So it doesn't really matter much. You can just not play with the Oracle's Eye while it's your opponent's turn to act. Then there are a couple more bug fixes and a bunch of new bug fixes. These were from the last hotfix. And yeah, just check them out specifically if you want to. Going through all the bug fixes will kind of like further bloat the video, and we already crossed the half-hour mark here, so I don't want to like keep you here any longer. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about the balance patch. Basically, if we look at the changes, they nerfed 2 cards in Corinna, they nerfed 2 cards in Burn, they nerfed two cards in Demacia midrange stuff, they nerfed 1 card in Karma decks, notably Karma herself. So they kind of addressed most of the major players right now that have been clear standouts. So we'll see how that levels the playing field and how things shake out. It's certainly going to be interesting because the format, I think, started to become a little too settled already, and it's nice to see a bit of a shake-up. So I'm excited to experiment and see how things turn out. But yeah, until then, let me know in the comments what you think. Leave a like if you enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content. And yeah, before you leave, don't forget to check out the sponsor links in the description down below for NordVPN and LOR Guardian, the deals and free deck tracker download. And yeah, that's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. Thank you for watching. Bye.